Yes, so he woke up as normal on the Tuesday morning. It was the 18th of July. He said he had a bit of a pain in his left hand and there was a little spot there and we thought nothing of it. He was feeling a little bit tired, but we put it down to the end of school term coming up. He went to school as normal for sort of 8:30. He texted me 11 o'clock saying, I asked him if he felt okay, and he said, oh, I feel fine. It's a bit distracting, but I'm fine. I'm going to go and play football. And then at 12 o'clock, school rang me and asked if they could give him some extra painkillers. And I said, yeah, he'd already had some. And being a nurse, I had a feeling he had an infection coming, like from that little spot, I thought possibly. And he was due to go away on the Friday to France for school. So I thought, we'll go and get it sorted before he goes. And I told the school this. And they were, oh, great, okay. And then literally half an hour later, they rang me again at work and said, he's actually feeling really poorly. So, and I was working in a separate area to where I normally work. And so I arranged for a friend to collect him. And I got home about probably 2 hours later and he'd vomited. He was in bed, he was sweating, he was very grey. And his hand was absolutely huge. And that had been since 7:30 that morning. I work in A&E in Taunton, so I went in straight away. I knew he was septic, so I got into work, and I don't know what he was scoring on the OBS system, but I knew that he was septic. And they literally got the consultant to see him straight away. They were worried about the bone infection, septic arthritis, and asked for orthopaedics to review him. And he was on antibiotics straight away, a really high amount. And he went for his first washout that evening. The next morning, he wasn't any better. They were worried about his arm. He had some tenderness in his left armpit. So they sent him for an MRI scan to see what was going on and kept him near my mouth just in case. And basically, over the course of the next few days, he had another washout and he was in hospital for 8 days. When they diagnosed osteomyelitis, which I didn't know much about being in A&E, we kind of know a little bit about lots of things. We don't have a deep knowledge on lots of stuff. And he went home that day. He was going to be on 6 weeks antibiotics, obviously missed his French trip, but I was just relieved he was okay. And then 3 days later, under the dressing, the hand started oozing this awful looking stuff, but he was clinically really well. So I took him back into work. And they said he's needing another washout. So they took his bloods. His blood levels were absolutely fine, and because it had burst out of his body, he wasn't septic. So they booked him in for a washout the next morning, and they had to attach a vacuum pump to his left hand to kind of withdraw any pus that was in there. And he was quite unwell that day, actually. It was really scary. And then he had another operation. So that was his 4th operation on the following Tuesday. And luckily, that was it. So, and he was in hospital then on IV antibiotics till the Thursday. And then he's come home and he's had physio, lots of outpatient appointments, and he's still on antibiotics orally. And he looks completely well. Like, you wouldn't believe he's been poorly. It was a blessing because I knew if his hand hadn't swollen, I would have assumed it's a tummy bug, because there was no other, he didn't have a cough, he had no, he did have pain in his hands, but I don't know if I would have, if from the pain in his hand, but the fact that it's swollen. It was a curse because I think I knew a little bit too much. So when they sent him for the scan on the Wednesday morning, and that worried me because I knew what they were thinking, that it spread, and all these situations going through my mind, of worst case scenarios, and I didn't want to talk about it with the nurses and the doctors in case I looked like a neurotic nurse mum. But it was great in the fact they were very honest with me and what they were going to be doing. But like I say, it was the fact that it could have been a tummy bug, and if he'd got on the coach 3 days later to go to his school trip in France, they could have been mistaken for, if it happened that day, it could be mistaken for travel sickness or a tummy bug. And I kept replaying all these situations in my head, what could have happened. And I had to kind of stop myself from doing that and go back to the fact that he was safe. He was being really well looked after by the orthopaedic team. They were absolutely superb and treated him like a complete VIP, because he'd just done work experience at the hospital literally about 3 weeks before that. So So he kind of knew the system and the scans and everything. So he was amazing. But the whole thing was just downright scary. And I was living off my nerves, it felt like, for the whole 2.5 weeks. He stayed out of intensive care. He was on the children's ward, and he was there the whole time, apart from obviously coming home in between. His observations, I think after the second operation, they were really happy that he was clinically doing better. They realised after the first operation, strep A infection had got into this tiny little spot, and obviously changed his antibiotics, and obviously had to be barrier nurse for 24 hours. But once they knew the source of infection, it was it was a lot easier for them to know what to deal with. Well, they say, don't they, parents that are in the medical profession are generally quite sort of laid back and, oh, you'll be fine. And that was me that morning. I was like, oh, well, dose you on paracetamol, get you to school, you'll be fine. I took him to school to save him cycling. I thought I was doing a good job there. And he was like, oh, I just don't want to go to school, I'm really tired. So I feel really bad that I made him go to school that morning, because it was just a spot on his hand. And it wasn't until he got home and was really sick that I realised actually how poorly he was. But I think talking to people that aren't in the job or are in the job, they'd have all done the same thing. I've said to people that I know that if there's anything like a pain when having a wee, or tummy pain, or a cough or chest pain, anything, you just got to trust your gut. I mean, a lot of the time it is going to be a tummy bug or something, but I think we'd much rather see somebody, I'm sure a GP would say the same in their surgery, if they can get an appointment, or A&E, just to go and get advice from someone professional. Because if it is a viral illness, then at least you've been seen. I dread to think what would have happened if I'd left Freddie overnight thinking he was, it was a tummy bug. So I think, although parents feel that they're wasting NHS time, I think at least speak to 111, or, speak to your local surgery to get advice. Well, I think the issue is with 111 or a GP surgery, they're all overrun. And also with 111, they can't see the person. But obviously, if they come to A&E, we assess them in the triage room. And if it seems absolutely, it's not, because obviously we have a scoring system. So we do their blood pressure, their temperature. We have a scoring system. So the higher they score, the more likely it is to be sepsis. So, we could say, you're scoring okay, or you're scoring very high. We would educate them from there. What would be the next step? So obviously they're scoring high. We've got to get their bloods done, within an hour. We've got to get the antibiotics up and the fluids up. If scoring system is okay, then obviously we would get advice and think, what else could it be? But at least that parent's going to be going home with a bit more, they feel a bit more calmer and in control of looking after the child at home. Yeah, so he's been seen by the orthopaedic outpatient 3 times. He's been seen by physio last week, and they're really happy with what he's doing. They don't need to see him again, but they have given us obviously advice. He's going to see the consultant who actually saw him on the first evening, which he was actually, as it happens, a hand orthopedic specialist. So literally when he walked in, I wanted to curtsy at him when he first walked in, because I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So he's going to be seeing him on the 5th of September. So hopefully that'll be it then. And no, he's doing great. The palm of his hand is looking great. He's got scarring on the back of his hand, and he will continue having scarring. But he said to me, actually, I want to show those scars off, because he's been really brave. And he's a goalkeeper for his local football team as well. So he can't wait to get back out and play. So that won't be for a little while yet. So he's got some exercises to do before he can join back in the football. But no, he's great. He's had a bit of a slow summer holidays, but it's been great, because he's meant to be, he's been able to stay in bed and just recuperate and just rest. So yeah.